The topic that I'll be presenting is effectiveness of social media and online platforms in enhancing counseling services in the schools. So, a background of it, since I think just now you have heard Mr. Jim Lake, he presented on the school counseling. So it started in 2008, where every school needs a full-time counselor, that's at the minimum. And most of the time when the students are referred to the school counselor, it is because of some problematic behavior, so you should know that there will be some stigma attached to it. And most of the time you know that the students, if they have problems, they will probably go to their friends, and then sometimes they will go to their parents and probably their teachers, and the school counselor is always seen as the last resort. And nowadays, because more and more of them are actually going onto the internet, so they actually go there to get their self-help resources or get into some kind of online groups in order to find help, not necessarily going to any of the school resources sometimes. So the three main research questions that I have here are, number one, do social media and online platforms make counseling services more accessible? And the second one, does the use of social media reduce the stigma of counseling? And the third one, how effective is social media as an indirect counseling resource? So let's take a look at some of the things that have been written about social media. So the very first one, what has been said, right, about accessibility. That's where your clients are going right now. That's where they are, and that's where you need to reach them. And the second one is a great way for counselors to put themselves, or rather put ourselves out there and build a tribe of followers. And then the second one, with regards to stigma, think about what we as counselors ask our clients to do. Trust a complete stranger with their darkest secrets. Sometimes they don't even express to themselves. There's almost an implied safety within the anonymity of technology and not having to be face-to-face. And the second point, the more mental health counselors who are engaged in that conversation, putting out more and more information, normalizing issues that people are struggling with, the more stigma can be reduced. So in many ways, this is the third point that I would like the research to actually explore. In many ways, there is more available to the average person to assist with a mental health issue than ever before. The more counselors know about that, the more help we can be to our clients. So this is what I did in the research. It's mainly qualitative, and so face-to-face interviews. I interviewed 15 of the students within the school, and their ages are between 14 to 16 years. 12 of them are actually my clients, 3 of them are non-clients. So the way that I reached out to them was actually through social media. I put out like some kind of notice on my social media sites, and then after that they came forward. So out of these 15 of them, you can see the breakdown of what they actually use. 15 of them, so all of them actually use the website that I have. 13 of them use the Facebook page that I set up, and the Twitter account. These are actually professional sites, so they are not my personal Facebook or Twitter pages. And AskFM, there's 11 of them. And then after that, there's also feedback that they gave, which is unsolicited, but there's content analysis from that feedback from them as well, through some of these social media sites. And then of course, lastly is the trend data that I've also collected, because I've been working in the school for a while, so from 2012 to 2014. So the very first question that I was asking about accessibility. So what I found is that social media and online platforms make counseling services more accessible. And these are some of the feedback that the students actually gave during the one-to-one, face-to-face interviews. Like, that's very convenient, they can access it anytime, anywhere. And then for the website, because they can make real-time scheduling of appointments. And then there's information on the counselor profile, because I put that all out on the website, the counseling process and other related resources. And then for the Facebook, because when they access it, then these are the things that they can also find out about codes and articles and other interesting videos. For Twitter, because I link all these together, so even if they are not on Facebook, they can access it on Twitter if they are my following on Twitter. So any of the Facebook links or the other FM responses and interaction with students. Sometimes they might send me a tweet or something like that. And Ask FM, I'm not sure if any of you are aware of what that is. Some nodding of head, some don't know. Okay, those who know what it is. So it's a little bit like Agony kind of thing. So they can post questions anytime, and then they can get help, and yet stay anonymous if they are afraid to approach me directly. So these are some of the things that they have given feedback to me through Ask FM. So I've actually extracted some of the information and highlighted some of the parts in red, which actually supports the research findings as well. Like that they think it's a good idea that they will be able to get help if supposing they can't like see me immediately, or it's more convenient, it's less awkward, and that I reach out to them through social media, and they are very thankful to be able to remain anonymous in that. Okay, the second question with regards to social media, whether it reduces the stigma of counselling. So what they have given feedback is that the activity on the social media actually provides insight of who the counsellor is. So obviously my personality is there, right? In a way, you know what kind of things I'm interested in, what I agree with, what I don't agree with, I post stuff. And so even things like, for example, if there's certain music that I feel is inspirational and it's nice, I might post it there or something like that. So that might actually make them feel that, okay, they kind of have an idea of what kind of person I may be or what kind of likes I have. So that increases that familiarity and also the approachability. And then also this other part about the questions and the responses on Ask FM, because it's actually visible to the students. So they feel that, you know, I'm not alone, we are all in the same boat kind of feeling. And that's sometimes very comforting. So when you look at the trend data that I have, because I've been there for a few years, from 2012 to 2013, there's an increase of 70% of the total number of students who have actually seen me. And then for 2012, 13 to 14 is a 26% increase. And then of all the cases, the new cases who have come up, 60% of them are self-referrals. So unlike in other schools, most of the time it's referred to see the school counselor either by teachers or parents or something like that, but quite a large number of them are actually walk-in cases, or they kind of make the appointments through the website. These are also some of the feedback from Twitter about their responses as well, how they feel about me putting myself out there on Twitter, I guess. So I don't have to read that, you can take a look at it yourself. Okay, let me flash to the next one. Okay, and the last research question about social media being an effective indirect counseling resource. So because it's accessible 24/7, and then they can access the Facebook or the Twitter to find out some of this information or feel inspired or whatever. So some of these points that they brought up. And for Ask FM in particular, they find it very effective. They can remain anonymous if they are afraid to come and see me. And they also get help because of the generic responses too, if they have similar issues as well. In some cases, if supposing the issues seem like they need a face-to-face kind of intervention, then I do respond that, you know, they are encouraged to come and see me. And so there have been a few of them who, after asking some questions on Ask FM, they came forward. And there were also some people who actually, they are seeing me, but they are a little bit awkward about certain kinds of issues, and they pose a question on Ask FM, and then after that they come and see me and they let me know that they asked that particular question, something like that. So, interestingly, Ask FM is something that was set up because one of the students actually gave a suggestion to me. So this is an extract of a Facebook message through my Facebook page that she sent to me, and that was about a year ago. And she actually gave this suggestion. This is one of the students who gave a suggestion that Ask FM can be a very good way of reaching out to the students. And this is what she said, and some of the highlights there as well. If they need help, you know, then they can reach out through this particular avenue, because a lot of people are quite hesitant to come forward to see the counselor. And then after I set it up, these were some of the comments that they gave through the Ask FM as well. That it's a good idea, they can relate to the problems, the advice is very heartening to hear, and like how I responded was very sensitive and with a lot of heart. With regards to how well used it is for AskFM, because it was set up only about a year ago, since October last year. In the first month, 94 questions were asked. So of course that was a peak, right? Because this first time the floodgates open, so they can ask lots of questions. But you can also see that throughout the year, they have been also posing questions. So it is very well used in that sense. So in that first year, up to October this year, 500 over questions were asked, almost 600 bit. But the problem that we also see with regards to social media, which I'm sure you are aware of, is it is not as effective as face-to-face, okay? And it is not suitable for more serious and severe cases as well. Then the tricky issue then that we need to also take note of is the risk of misinterpretation. You know, sometimes the content, they may not understand it, or they may not necessarily like what you say, so we can't avoid that. Okay, some of the discussion with regards to the findings. For sure, I feel that the use of social media and online platforms, they do enhance the counseling services within the school. And accessibility, what we need to also be able to realize is that every school is very different. So in our school, all the girls are actually equipped with digital devices to access the school internet. But that may not be the case for other schools. And then the other thing also is that within the school, there's a wide use of social media and online platforms as well. So if supposing you are considering using it in your school, if you are working in a school, then you have to take a look at what's the profile of the digital users in your school, and the choice of social media platforms as well. But even if they do not have a computer device, quite a lot of teens nowadays have it on their mobile, their smartphones. So we may not kind of like limit the thing to you must have some kind of like computer that they carry with them. Most of them will use phones, smartphones. Then with regards to stigma of counseling, one thing that's clear is that human connection and that human touch, the personal touch has to be there. And that's the thing that kind of bridges the gap in a way. Because the counselor is one person and you can't be physically there everywhere in the entire school. So in a way, when you have that social media presence, right, it does actually help facilitate that mass feel, okay? We know that from other kinds of people who do use social media as well to have that kind of presence too. So the students are then more open to approach the counselor for help online. And of course, the increase of the number of students, the actual number of students who have come to see us, and high number of self-referrals. And with regards to effectiveness of the indirect counseling services or resource, the things to consider: familiarization of the social media platforms. So actually, of the three that you saw, I'm not familiar with all of them. The one that I started out using was Facebook. And Facebook is probably like more of my generation kind of thing. So Twitter was something that I actually learned over time. So it was actually through like interacting with the students that I learned that as well. So that's new for me. So it's not like I'm really savvy, I'm not IT savvy at all. I just use it. And then of course, same thing for AskFM. It was only about a year ago, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be useful, but I was open to trying it out, and tried it out, and it seemed to work. So I continued using it. In fact, out of the three, you notice that AskFM is the one that was actually recommended or suggested by the students, right? And out of the three, that is actually also the most successful social media that I've used with the girls. Then the other thing, of course, is to remain active on the social media, because if you have the thing there, but you don't use it, you don't post anything, you don't tweet anything, then obviously they're not going to go to it, they're not going to visit it, which then makes it a white elephant, which is not very helpful, not very useful. Another thing that you might be very concerned about is time consuming. Yes, it is very time consuming, I admit that, because social media is 24/7, and you need your own like self-care, your own space and so on, which is something that you need to consider if you want to use this platform. How are you going to say like, okay, that's enough of the social media, I'm not going to go to it, or are you going to allocate a certain amount of time to actually respond to whatever that you need to. So that's what I would do sometimes. And then the types of posts, you need to be very aware of what you're posting, because if it's representative or something that you believe in, then you post it. But if you post something without really like going through the content of it, and it's very offensive to the other person, then that's not very wise. So you have to exercise that as well. And of course the net etiquette, which can be quite a tricky issue. We teach the students a lot, but sometimes adults make the same mistakes too. I guess we actually also need to maybe attend some of these courses as well, because we may not necessarily be as familiar as how the students and the youngsters use it these days. I mean, some of you are young, but okay, so you all should be fine. But if you're not very familiar with it, I think we need to be more aware of how all these things work. Okay, this part of the discussion, I wanted to actually highlight some interesting things. I'm not sure if you realize it, but these are some of the Facebook pages that I've actually extracted from those who are doing counseling in other countries. Okay, so if you just observe these are like from US, from UK, from Australia. Okay, I'm going to flash another one. Shows you those counseling agencies in Singapore. Just a quick point, my question to you is, do you notice what's the difference between these two? Just here and here. Person? No, don't talk about the followers. Yeah, person. What about the person?
People power. See all their faces are. We are more organization based.
Yeah.
You're hiding in the place.
Yeah.
Hiding under the screen.
It is a very big difference actually, if you notice, which I was trying very hard. I looked so hard, for all the local ones, and I couldn't quite find any that had a face on it. Yeah, maybe it's a very cultural thing, Asian thing. We kind of like hide behind an organization. And so there is a difference because these are all fronted by the organization. The personal touch needs to be there. So if you were to look at the difference between how the counselors from other countries, how they put their, how they use Facebook or Twitter, as a professional page, it's actually quite different from the Asian one. So then let me show you what I've done with mine, I guess. That's important, right? So the very first one here, Heartfelt Connections, is actually a web page. It's my name, so if you want to take a look, it's www.michellekoay.com. And then the Facebook page is there. And then this is the Twitter, and the other one is AskFM. So these are the ones that the girls have access to. So even if they don't have the link, they can go to the link directly from the Facebook page itself. But they are kind of like all interconnected, the Facebook page, Twitter, and AskFM. So they can access any of them at any time. Okay, so for conclusion, the research findings, they actually do inform us that social media and online platforms, they effectively enhance the counseling services in the school. Then the role of the counselor is redefined because it's beyond face-to-face interaction. This is to outreach and to influence the clients in the community. And then social media and online platforms, this is a very important point because it should only augment and complement the counseling services, but it cannot replace the face-to-face sessions. Right? So the further studies that needs to be done, of course, will be to explore the effectiveness of this for other types of schools, of course, boys' schools, co-ed schools, and mainstream schools, because this was done in a all-girls school. Yeah. And this is just the references, and that's all. Thank you. If you have any questions. Do you have any questions?